The whiskey glass shattered against the wall, missing Lily Jennings' head by mere inches. She ducked instinctively, her heart hammering in her chest as the angry voice of Silas Blackburn, owner of the Silver Dollar Saloon, echoed through the small back room. "You ain't going nowhere, girl. I paid good money for you, and you'll stay put until I say otherwise." Lily backed toward the window, her hands trembling. At 22, she'd seen enough of life's cruelties to know when a situation had turned deadly. 6 months ago, when she'd arrived in Terlingua, Texas, desperate and penniless after her father's death had left her with nothing but debts, Blackburn's offer of work had seemed like salvation. She hadn't understood then what entertaining the customers truly meant. "I never agreed to this kind of work, Mr. Blackburn," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I can't stay here any longer." Blackburn's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little," he lunged forward, but Lily was quicker. She grabbed her small cloth bag of belongings she'd packed earlier and slipped through the window into the cool night air. The October evening was mercifully dark as Lily ran down the alley behind the saloon, the sounds of raucous laughter and piano music fading behind her. She had no plan, no destination, only the desperate need to escape before Blackburn could force her into a life she couldn't bear. Terlingua was little more than a mining settlement in 1878, tucked away in the harsh Chihuahuan desert landscape of West Texas. The cinnabar mines had brought men seeking fortune, and where miners gathered, saloons followed. Lily had no friends, no family, and now no shelter as the desert night grew colder. She slowed her pace once she reached the edge of town, breathing hard, her thin cotton dress offering little protection against the autumn chill. The vast Texas sky stretched above her, stars impossibly bright without city lights to dim them. In the distance, she could see the silhouette of mountains against the night sky, mysterious and foreboding. "Where now?" she whispered to herself, fighting back tears. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her freeze. Instinctively, she stepped off the road, crouching behind a large boulder. A lone rider approached from the direction of town, moving at a steady pace. As he passed, the moonlight caught his profile, a strong jaw shadowed by several days' growth, the brim of a cowboy hat pulled low. The rider suddenly reined his horse to a stop, turning the animal in a circle as he scanned the darkness. "Anyone out there?" His voice was deep, with the slight drawl common to the region. Lily remained still, hardly daring to breathe. "I know someone's there," he called again. "I don't mean any harm, just checking if you need help." Something in his tone, a genuine concern, made Lily hesitate. Blackburn would send men searching for her soon enough. She couldn't stay hidden by the roadside forever. Slowly, she stood, keeping the boulder between them. "How do I know you're not one of Blackburn's men?" The rider turned toward her voice. "Blackburn, that saloon owner. Madam, I don't work for anyone but myself." He dismounted, keeping a respectful distance. "Name's Matthew Parker. I run a cattle ranch about 5 miles west of here." Lily stepped out cautiously, still ready to bolt if necessary. "I'm Lily Jennings." In the moonlight, she could see him more clearly now, tall and broad-shouldered, perhaps 30 years old, with features that spoke of long days under the sun. "You running from something, Miss Jennings?" he asked quietly. Lily hesitated, then decided honesty was her only option. "Mr. Blackburn, I was working at his saloon, but not in the way he wanted. I refused, and now I fear he'll force me to." She couldn't finish the sentence. Matthew's expression hardened. "I understand." He glanced back toward town, then at her thin dress and small bag. "You have somewhere to go, family nearby?" Lily shook her head. "No, my father died in Dallas. I came west hoping to find honest work." A long silence followed as Matthew seemed to consider something. Finally, he spoke. "Miss Jennings, I have a proposition for you. Not the kind you're running from," he added quickly. "I have a ranch house with a spare room. You can stay there until you sort things out. No strings attached." Lily stared at him, searching for deceit in his eyes but finding none. "Why would you help a stranger?" Matthew shrugged. "My ma raised me to help folks in need. I'm not asking anything from you. You can leave whenever you want." The sound of voices from town made Lily's decision for her. "I accept your offer, Mr. Parker, though I have nothing to pay you with." Not asking for payment. He extended his hand toward his horse. "Come on. We should get moving before Blackburn organizes a search party." With surprising gentleness, he helped her mount his horse, then swung up behind her, keeping a respectful distance between them. The stallion moved swiftly away from town, heading west into the vastness of the Texas landscape. As they rode, Lily felt the tension in her shoulders begin to ease, though wariness remained. She'd learned the hard way that a man's kindness often came with expectations. Yet something about Matthew Parker's straightforward manner gave her hope this might be different. "My ranch isn't much," Matthew said after they'd been riding for some time. "But it's peaceful. Got about 50 head of cattle, some chickens, a good well. The house isn't fancy, but it's solid." "It sounds wonderful," Lily replied sincerely. After months in the cramped, smoke-filled rooms above the saloon, anywhere quiet and clean would seem like paradise. They crested a small rise, and in the moonlight, Lily could make out the silhouette of a modest ranch house nestled in a protected valley. A barn stood nearby, and in the distance, she could see the outline of corrals. "There it is," Matthew said. "Parker Ranch. Not the biggest spread in Texas, but it's mine, free and clear." Pride colored his voice, and Lily felt a sudden admiration for this man who had carved out his own place in the harsh landscape. As they approached the house, a dog began to bark, racing out to meet them. "That's just Rusty," Matthew explained. "Best cattle dog in the county and a good watchdog, too." The horse came to a stop in front of a simple wooden porch. Matthew dismounted first, then offered his hand to help Lily down. When her feet touched the ground, a wave of exhaustion swept over her, the culmination of fear, adrenaline, and uncertainty. "You all right?" Matthew asked, steadying her with a gentle hand on her elbow. "Yes, just tired." Lily straightened, determined to show strength. "It's been a long day." Matthew nodded understandingly. "Let me show you inside, get you settled. You must be hungry too." The interior of the ranch house was simple but clean. A main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a cast iron stove, a wooden table with 4 chairs, and a comfortable-looking armchair near the fireplace. 2 doors led off the main room. "That's my room," Matthew said, indicating one door, "and that'll be yours." He opened the second door, revealing a small but neat bedroom with a single bed, a wooden chest, and a small window. "It's not much, but it's private." "It's perfect," Lily said, meaning it. The room was plain but clean, with fresh-looking bedding and a small rag rug on the wooden floor. "I'll let you get settled while I stable the horse. There's water in the pitcher on the table if you're thirsty. I'll fix us something to eat when I get back." Left alone, Lily placed her small bag on the bed and sat down beside it, finally allowing herself to take a deep breath. The events of the evening seemed almost dreamlike now. Had she really escaped the saloon? Was she truly sitting in a strange cowboy's home, miles from town? She glanced around the room, looking for signs that might tell her more about the man who had offered her shelter. The furnishings were simple but well-maintained. A small shelf held a few books surprising in a cowboy's home. She crossed to examine them: a Bible, a volume on animal husbandry, and a worn copy of The Last of the Mohicans. The sound of the door opening announced Matthew's return. Lily stepped out of the bedroom to find him washing his hands at a basin. "Hope you like beans and bacon," he said without turning around. "Not much else on hand at the moment." "That sounds wonderful," Lily replied honestly. "Can I help?" Matthew glanced over his shoulder, seemingly surprised by the offer. "Sure. You can slice some bread if you like. There's a loaf in that box." They worked in companionable silence for a few minutes. Lily found the rhythm of domestic work soothing after the chaos of the evening. Matthew moved efficiently around the kitchen, warming beans in a pot and frying bacon in a cast-iron skillet. When they sat down to eat, Lily realized how hungry she was. The simple meal tasted better than anything she'd had in months. "Thank you," she said after a few minutes of silent eating. "Not just for the meal, but for everything." Matthew nodded, his eyes meeting hers briefly before returning to his plate. "No need for thanks. I've been on my own since I was 16. Know what it's like to need help and not have anyone to turn to." "Your parents?" Lily asked softly. "Died of typhoid, same outbreak. I was away working at a neighboring ranch when it happened." His voice was matter-of-fact, but Lily could sense the old pain beneath the words. "I'm sorry," Matthew shrugged. "It was 12 years ago I learned to manage." "You've done more than manage," Lily observed, gesturing to the room around them. "You've built something here." A small smile touched Matthew's lips. "Suppose I have it that." He finished his meal and pushed back from the table. "You must be tired. We can talk more tomorrow, figure out what you want to do next." "What I want to do next," Lily repeated. "Well, I meant what I said. You're welcome to stay as long as you need, but I reckon you'll want to make plans. Maybe head to a bigger town where there's proper work for a young woman." The thought of leaving the relative safety she'd just found filled Lily with dread. "Could I? Might I stay for a little while? I can earn my keep. I'm good at cooking, cleaning, sewing." Matthew held up a hand. "You don't need to earn your keep, but yes, you can stay as long as you want." He stood, collecting their plates. "Get some rest, Miss Jennings. Things often look clearer in the morning light." That night, lying in a clean bed for the first time in months, Lily stared at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cattle, the occasional bark from Rusty, the creaking of the house as it settled. She thought about Matthew Parker, with his quiet strength and unexpected kindness. She didn't trust him, yet couldn't afford to, but for the first time since her father's death, Lily felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps here, in this remote corner of Texas, she might find more than just temporary shelter. Dawn broke with a palette of pinks and oranges painting the sky outside Lily's window. For a moment, she was disoriented, the unfamiliar room confusing her sleep-addled mind. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back, and with them, a mixture of relief and anxiety. She rose quickly, making the bed and smoothing her rumpled dress as best she could. She had only one other dress in her bag, nearly as worn as the one she wore, along with a few personal items she'd managed to bring from Dallas. When she emerged from her room, Lily found the main living area empty, though evidence of Matthew's breakfast, a plate and coffee cup, sat on the table. From outside came the sound of an axe hitting wood. Lily washed the dishes and tidied the kitchen, then ventured onto the porch. Matthew was at the chopping block, splitting logs for firewood. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing muscled forearms as he worked. He looked up as she appeared, pausing mid-swing. "Morning, Miss Jennings. Sleep well?" "Yes, thank you," Lily replied. "Better than I have in months." Matthew nodded, satisfied. "Good. There's coffee still warm on the stove if you want some. I've got to finish these chores, then I need to ride out and check the north pasture. One of my hands reported a break in the fence yesterday." "You have workers?" Lily asked, surprised she hadn't seen anyone else. "Just two. Brothers Tomás and Eduardo Vasquez. Good men. They live in a cabin about a quarter-mile that way. He pointed west. They handle most of the cattle work with me. Lily nodded, relieved there were others nearby. Not that she feared Matthew exactly, but the isolation of the ranch had begun to register. Would it be all right if I explored a bit? Get my bearings, of course. This is your temporary home. Go where you please. Matthew resumed his chopping. Just don't wander too far alone until you know the land. Easy to get turned around out here. Lily spent the morning familiarizing herself with the ranch house and immediate surroundings. The property was well maintained, if modest. Behind the house was a small vegetable garden, now mostly harvested for the season, but she could see it had been productive. A chicken coop housed a dozen hens that clucked and pecked as she approached. The barn was clean and organized with stalls for 4 horses, though currently only 2 were occupied. Everything spoke of hard work and careful stewardship. Matthew Parker might live simply, but he took pride in what was his. By midday, Lily had cleaned the house from top to bottom, wanting to contribute something in return for Matthew's kindness. She found flour and lard in the pantry and decided to make biscuits to accompany whatever dinner might be planned. She was so absorbed in her task that she didn't hear the approaching riders until they were nearly at the house. Panic flared briefly had Blackburn found her, but then she recognized Matthew's voice greeting someone. The door opened and Matthew entered, followed by 2 Hispanic men who removed their hats respectfully upon seeing her. Miss Jennings, these are the Vasquez brothers I mentioned. Tomás and Eduardo. Matthew gestured to the men. This is Miss Lily Jennings. She'll be staying with us for a while. The older brother, Tomás, nodded politely. Mucho gusto, señorita. Eduardo, perhaps a few years younger, smiled shyly. Welcome to Parker Ranch, Miss Jennings. Lily returned their greetings, noting the easy respect between the men and Matthew. It spoke well of him as an employer. Something smells mighty good, Matthew observed, eyeing the biscuits cooling on the table. I hope you don't mind. I wanted to contribute something. Mind? Miss Jennings, I haven't had homemade biscuits since Mrs. Flores down at the general store took pity on me last Christmas. The Vasquez brothers laughed, and Eduardo said something in Spanish that made Tomás elbow him in the ribs. What did he say? Lily asked, curious. Matthew's cheeks colored slightly. Nothing important. The brothers were just about to head back to finish mending that fence. The brothers took the hint, saying their goodbyes and promising to return the next day. As they left, Lily caught Eduardo glancing back with a knowing smile that made her wonder exactly what he had said. Over a simple lunch of beans, leftover bacon, and fresh biscuits, Matthew explained more about the ranch's operations. It's not a big spread compared to some, but the land's good. Got water year-round from the creek that runs through the north section. Breeding stock is healthy. I'm hoping to expand next year if the market holds. How long have you had this place? Lily asked. Going on 8 years now. Worked as a ranch hand, saving every penny after my folks died, then came out here when this land opened for settlement. A shadow crossed his face. Not everyone was pleased about newcomers staking claims. The local ranchers, Matthew nodded, and some folks who'd been running cattle on open range for years without owning the land, had some difficulties at first, but things settled down eventually. The way he said difficulties made Lily suspect there was more to the story, but she didn't press. What about you, Miss Jennings? You mentioned your father passed in Dallas. Lily set down her fork, the memories still raw. Yes, he was a bookkeeper for a shipping company. Not a wealthy man, but we lived comfortably enough. When he died of pneumonia last winter, I discovered he'd been gambling. There were debts I couldn't pay. She swallowed hard. The house and everything in it was sold to satisfy the creditors. "I'm sorry," Matthew said quietly. "Must have been a hard blow." "It was. I stayed with a friend for a while, but her husband made it clear I wasn't welcome for long. I heard there were opportunities out west for women willing to work." A bitter laugh escaped her. "I didn't realize what kind of opportunities some men had in mind until I was already here." Matthew's jaw tightened. "Blackburn has a reputation. Should have warned you when I saw you get off that stage 2 months back." "You remember that?" Lily asked, surprised. "Not many new faces come to Terlingua, especially not." He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "Especially not young women alone," Lily finished for him. Matthew nodded. "I was in town picking up supplies. Saw Blackburn meet you at the stage, looking like a cat that found the cream. Figured you must be a relative of his." His expression darkened. "Should have said something." "You couldn't have known," Lily assured him. "And you're helping me now, which is more than anyone else has done." After lunch, Matthew needed to return to work, and Lily insisted on accompanying him. "I can't just sit in the house all day. Let me help with something." Matthew seemed hesitant. "Ranch work isn't ladies' work, Miss Jennings." "I'm stronger than I look," Lily countered. "And I grew up helping my father with his garden. I'm not afraid of dirt or hard work." After some consideration, Matthew agreed to let her help with the chickens and garden. The vegetable patch needs clearing before winter. Most of the harvest is in, but there are still some late squash and beans to collect. For the remainder of the afternoon, Lily worked in the garden, grateful for the physical activity that kept her mind from dwelling on her situation. From time to time, she would glimpse Matthew working with the horses or mending equipment, his movements efficient and purposeful. By evening, her hands were dirty and her back ached pleasantly from honest work. She had collected a basket of vegetables and even found some late herbs growing along the garden's edge. When Matthew returned to the house, he looked at her harvest with approval. "You've done a fine job, Miss Jennings. Those squash will make a good soup." "I thought so too," Lily agreed. "If you don't mind, I'd like to cook dinner tonight." Matthew smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, softening the weather-worn lines and bringing a warmth to his eyes that made Lily's heart skip unexpectedly. "I won't argue with that offer," he said. "My cooking keeps body and soul together, but that's about all that can be said for it." As Lily prepared a heartier meal than Matthew was probably accustomed to, she found herself humming softly something she hadn't done in months. There was something deeply satisfying about creating a meal from vegetables she had harvested herself, in a kitchen that, while not her own, at least felt safe. Over dinner, Matthew seemed more relaxed, sharing stories about the early days of establishing the ranch. Lily, in turn, told him about her childhood in Dallas, her father's love of books that he had passed on to her, and her mother who had died when Lily was just 14. "She taught me to cook and sew," Lily explained. "Said every woman should know how to make a home, whether or not she ever married." "She sounds like a wise woman," Matthew observed. "She was. I miss her still." Lily looked around the simple but comfortable kitchen. She would have approved of this place. She always said the grandest house was nothing without care put into it. "Well, it's had precious little of a woman's touch these past years," Matthew admitted. "But it serves me well enough." As they cleared the dishes together, Matthew insisting on helping despite Lily's protests, a comfortable silence fell between them. It struck Lily as strange how quickly she had adjusted to this man's presence, how natural it felt to move around a kitchen with him, despite having known him less than a day. "I'll need to go into town tomorrow," Matthew said suddenly. "We're low on some supplies and I should check if there's mail." Lily froze, her hands stilling on the plate she was drying. "Do you think, will Blackburn be looking for me?" Matthew considered this. "Likely, but he has no authority over you. You weren't indentured to him, were you? No contract." "No," Lily said firmly. "He hired me as a serving girl, nothing more. When he tried to change our arrangement, I refused." Matthew nodded. "Then you've broken no law by leaving. Still, it might be best if you stay here while I go to town. No sense risking a confrontation." Relief washed over Lily. The thought of facing Blackburn again so soon filled her with dread. "I'd appreciate that. I can continue working in the garden while you're gone. The Vasquez brothers will be working the west pasture tomorrow. If you need anything, Eduardo speaks good English." That night, as Lily prepared for bed, she realized with surprise that she felt more at home after one day at Parker Ranch than she had during her entire 6 months in Terlingua. There was something about the quiet strength of the man who owned it that inspired confidence. Despite her general wariness of male intentions, she knew she couldn't stay forever. Eventually, she would need to find her own way in the world. But for now, this unexpected sanctuary was exactly what she needed: a place to recover her strength and plan her future. The next morning, Matthew departed early for town, leaving Lily with instructions to keep Rusty nearby for protection and to call for the Vasquez brothers if anything concerned her. "I should be back by mid-afternoon," he said as he mounted his horse. "Don't worry about Blackburn. Even if he knows you're here, he wouldn't dare come onto my land." Something in the way he said it made Lily wonder again about those difficulties Matthew had mentioned when first settling here. There was steel beneath his quiet demeanor, she was beginning to realize. With Matthew gone, Lily threw herself into work around the ranch house. She finished clearing the garden, collected eggs, and even discovered a small root cellar behind the house where preserves and root vegetables were stored. By midday, she had prepared a stew that could simmer until Matthew returned, and had started mending a shirt of his she'd found with a torn sleeve. Sitting on the porch with the mending, enjoying the autumn sunshine, she almost didn't notice the approaching rider until Rusty began to bark. Her heart raced as she stood, shading her eyes against the sun. The rider wasn't Matthew. This man was heavier, with a flash of red suspenders visible even at a distance. Lily retreated inside the house, closing the door firmly and reaching for the rifle she'd noticed earlier mounted above the fireplace. She'd never fired a gun before, but her father had explained the basic mechanics once. She hoped just the sight of it would be enough to deter whoever was approaching. The rider reached the yard and called out, "Hello, the house. Anyone home?" Lily remained silent, the rifle heavy in her hands as she positioned herself away from the window. "Miss Jennings, I know you're in there. I'm Sheriff Wilson from Terlingua. Just want to talk, that's all." A sheriff? Lily hesitated. If he was truly the law, refusing to speak with him could make matters worse. Still, she kept the rifle ready as she moved to the door. "What do you want, Sheriff?" she called through the closed door. "Just to make sure you're all right, madam. Mr. Blackburn reported you missing, said you might be in danger." Anger flashed through Lily. "Mr. Blackburn is the one I'm in danger from, Sheriff. I left his employment willingly after he tried to force me into improper work." There was a pause, then a sigh. "Can I come in, Miss Jennings? Or at least can you come out so we can talk proper? It's mighty hot out here." Lily considered her options. If he truly was the sheriff, barring him would only create problems, and Matthew had said Blackburn had no legal claim on her. "You can talk from where you are," she decided. "I'm not opening this door." Another pause. "Fair enough. Mr. Blackburn claims you stole money from him before leaving, says you owe him for room and board these past months." "That's a lie," Lily said firmly. "I worked for my keep, and I took nothing but what was mine when I left." "And how did you end up here at Parker's Ranch?" Mr. Parker found me walking outside town and offered me shelter when he learned of my situation. He was being a gentleman, nothing more." The sheriff chuckled. "Matthew Parker's many things, but I'm not sure gentleman is the word most folks would use. Has he told you about his past, Miss Jennings?" A seed of doubt tried to take root in Lily's mind, but she pushed it away. "Sheriff, I don't know what you're implying, but Mr. Parker has been nothing but respectful toward me. If you have business with him, you can return when he's back from town." "I intend to," the sheriff replied, "but I thought you should know Blackburn isn't the type to let things go. He has friends in Terlingua, influential friends, and Parker, well, he's had his share of troubles with the law." Now fear mingled with the doubt. What had Matthew not told her? "Is Mr. Parker wanted for some crime?" "Not at present," the sheriff admitted. "But he's known to have a temper when crossed. Got himself in serious trouble some years back. Nearly killed a man in a fight." Lily's hands tightened on the rifle. "I believe that's between Mr. Parker and his conscience, Sheriff. Now, unless you have an actual warrant or some legal reason to be here, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave." The silence stretched longer this time. Finally, the sheriff said, "Very well, Miss Jennings, I'll be on my way, but think about what I said. And if you ever need help getting back to town, you can send word to me." Lily waited until she could no longer hear hoofbeats before sinking into a chair, the rifle across her lap. Her hands were shaking. What had the sheriff meant about Matthew's past? Was it possible she had fled one dangerous situation only to find herself in another? No, she decided. Whatever Matthew Parker might have done in his past, he had shown her nothing but kindness and respect. She would reserve judgment until she could hear his side of the story. It was nearly sunset when Matthew returned, his pack horse laden with supplies. One look at his face told Lily he knew about the sheriff's visit. "Tamaz told me Wilson came by," he said as he unpacked the supplies. "What did he want?" Lily recounted the conversation, watching Matthew's expression carefully. His jaw tightened when she mentioned Blackburn's accusation of theft, but it was the sheriff's comments about Matthew's past that brought a flash of genuine anger to his eyes. "Did he now?" Matthew said quietly. "And I suppose he didn't bother mentioning that the fight he referred to happened because 3 men jumped me over a land dispute, and one pulled a knife." Relief washed over Lily. "No, he conveniently left that part out." Matthew set the last of the supplies on the table with controlled movements that spoke of his effort to remain calm. "Sheriff Wilson and Blackburn go way back. They've got business dealings together, though exactly what kind, no one's sure. Wilson's badge doesn't mean he's always on the right side of things." "I didn't believe him about you," Lily assured him, "but I was concerned about what he said regarding Blackburn having influential friends." Matthew's expression softened slightly. "That part's true enough. Blackburn's got money, and money talks in a place like Terlingua, but he can't touch you here. This is my land, and I don't take kindly to trespassers." The protectiveness in his voice sent an unexpected warmth through Lily. "Thank you for that. I was worried when the sheriff came, but Rusty let me know someone was approaching." "Good dog," Matthew said, reaching down to scratch the animal's ears. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Miss Jennings, I should have been more forthright about my history. There are folks in town who don't care for me much, and not just because of that fight. I've had run-ins with men who think they can take what they want without consequences." Lily studied him, seeing the weariness in his stance. "Mr. Parker, we all have parts of our past we don't share immediately. I don't think you're a violent man by nature." "I'm not," he said simply, "but I will protect what's mine." He glanced at her, then quickly added, "Not that you're mine." "I just meant, I understand," Lily interrupted, saving him from his awkward explanation. You're protecting someone under your roof. I appreciate that. Matthew nodded, visibly relieved. Did you manage all right otherwise today? Yes, actually. I made stew for dinner and it should be ready by now. As they ate, Matthew shared news from town. Supplies are getting more expensive with winter coming on. The railroad still hasn't reached closer than Presidio, so everything has to be hauled in by wagon. Will the winter be harsh here? Lily asked. Not like up north, but it gets cold enough, especially at night. We get some snow, occasional ice storms. The real challenge is making sure the cattle have enough grazing when the land gets sparse. As the evening progressed, Lily could sense Matthew was still troubled by the sheriff's visit. Finally, as they sat by the fire after dinner, he spoke. Miss Jennings, I've been thinking. If you're to stay here a while, we should consider your reputation. Lily tensed. What do you mean? Small communities like this, people talk. A single woman living with a bachelor, even with separate rooms. It won't look proper. Oh, Lily hadn't considered that aspect of her situation. In her desperation to escape Blackburn, propriety had been the last thing on her mind. Do you think people already know I'm here? The Vasquez brothers know, and now the sheriff. Word will spread. Matthew stared into the fire. I don't care much what people think of me, but I wouldn't want your reputation tarnished. What do you suggest? Matthew shifted uncomfortably. Well, one option would be for you to move to the Vasquez cabin. Their mother lived with them until she passed last year, so there's a small room there. Disappointment swept through Lily at the thought of leaving the ranch house, though she knew his suggestion was practical. Another option, Matthew continued, not meeting her eyes, would be to have Mrs. Vasquez, Tomas's wife, stay here as a chaperone of sorts. She lives in town now but visits the brothers often. That seems sensible, Lily said, relieved. There's one other possibility. Matthew finally looked at her directly. It would be an arrangement in name only, of course, but it would silence any gossip immediately. Lily's breath caught as she realized what he was suggesting. Mr. Parker, are you proposing marriage? A marriage of convenience only, he clarified quickly. You would have your own room, just as now. Nothing would change except what people believed, and it would give you legal protection from Blackburn or anyone else who might try to claim some right to you. Stunned, Lily struggled to form a coherent response. That's a very generous offer, but surely extreme. We barely know each other. I know, Matthew agreed. It's not ideal, but I thought I should present all options. He stood abruptly. Think about it. No need to decide tonight. The Vasquez cabin is probably the simplest solution for now. Before Lily could respond, he bid her good night and retreated to his room, leaving her alone by the fire with thoughts whirling through her mind like leaves in a West Texas dust storm. Marriage. Even in name only, it was a drastic step. Yet she couldn't deny a small flutter of something not entirely unpleasant at the thought of becoming Matthew Parker's wife, even if only on paper. Sleep came fitfully that night as Lily weighed her options. By morning, she had made her decision, though it wasn't without trepidation. Matthew was already outside when she emerged from her room, the smell of coffee beckoning her to the kitchen. She found a note on the table. Gone to check the east pasture, back mid-morning. M. Lily busied herself with breakfast preparations, rehearsing what she would say when Matthew returned. The domestic activity calmed her nerves somewhat, and by the time she heard his footsteps on the porch, she felt ready to speak her mind. Morning, Matthew said as he entered, removing his hat. Sorry I left so early. Wanted to check those cattle before the day got too warm. No need to apologize, Lily replied. I've made breakfast if you're hungry. They ate in relative silence, the weight of last night's conversation hanging between them. Finally, as they finished, Lily gathered her courage. "Mr. Parker, about what you suggested last night, please," he interrupted. "Forget I mentioned it. It was presumptuous of me. The Vasquez cabin is the sensible solution." "Actually," Lily said, meeting his gaze steadily, "I've been thinking about all three options, and I believe your last suggestion might be the most practical after all." Matthew stared at her, clearly surprised. "You can't mean the marriage of convenience." "I do." Lily folded her hands in her lap to hide their slight trembling. "It would solve several problems at once. My reputation would be protected, Blackburn would have no claim on me whatsoever, and we could continue as we are without disruption." "Miss Jennings, Lily, are you certain?" "Marriage is a serious commitment, even one in name only." "I understand that," she assured him, "and I wouldn't suggest it if I didn't trust you. You've shown me nothing but respect and kindness since we met." Matthew studied her face, his expression unreadable. "What about your future?" "You might meet someone you truly wish to marry." A shadow crossed Lily's face. "After what I've seen of men since my father died, that seems unlikely. Besides, such an arrangement could include provisions for dissolution should either of us wish to marry for other reasons later." "You've thought this through," Matthew observed. "I have. It seems the most sensible option, provided you're still willing." A long silence followed, during which Lily began to worry she had misunderstood his offer. Finally, Matthew spoke. "If we do this, we do it properly. A real ceremony, legal documents filed in Presidio. I won't have anyone questioning the validity of it later." Relief flooded through Lily. "Agreed. And to be clear about expectations, none," Matthew said firmly. "You'll have your room, your privacy, and my protection as my legal wife. Nothing more unless—" He trailed off, color rising in his face. "Unless feelings change," Lily finished softly, "which we have no reason to expect they will." Matthew nodded. "Exactly. A business arrangement for mutual benefit." Yet even as they shook hands to seal their unusual agreement, Lily couldn't help noticing the warmth of Matthew's palm against hers, the slight roughness of calluses that spoke of years of hard work, and the gentleness with which he held her hand, as if she were something precious he feared might break. The next week passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Matthew rode to Presidio to arrange for the justice of the peace to perform the ceremony, returning with news that the man could come to the ranch the following Saturday. "Thought it might be better than going into town," he explained. "Less chance of Blackburn causing trouble." Lily agreed, grateful for his thoughtfulness. She spent the days preparing the house, determined to make it worthy of a wedding, however unconventional. She polished, scrubbed, and rearranged until the simple dwelling gleamed. Matthew invited the Vasquez family to witness the ceremony, along with 2 ranching neighbors he trusted. "Small, but proper," he said when discussing the plans with Lily. The night before the wedding, as they sat by the fire completing the day's chores, Lily mending a shirt, Matthew cleaning his saddle, a comfortable silence enveloped them. It struck Lily how quickly they had fallen into domestic rhythms together, how natural it felt to share this space with him. "Penny for your thoughts," Matthew said, glancing up from his work. Lily smiled. "I was just thinking how strange life can be. 2 weeks ago I was trapped in that saloon, seeing no way out. Now I'm about to become a rancher's wife. Having second thoughts." His tone was light, but Lily detected genuine concern beneath the question. "No," she assured him, "just marveling at the turn of events." She hesitated, then added, "Are you?" "Having doubts, I mean." Matthew set aside his saddle and met her gaze directly. "Not about the arrangement. But I do worry you might regret tying yourself to a man you barely know, in a place so remote." "I've known cruelty and indifference from men I'd known far longer than you," Lily said quietly. "In the short time we've been acquainted, you've shown me more kindness and respect than most." I trust my judgment. Something flickered in Matthew's eyes, gratitude, perhaps, or something deeper. I'll do my best to prove that trust well placed. The wedding day dawned clear and cool, with a bright October sun warming the land. Lily wore her best dress, the only other one she owned besides her everyday garment. It was a simple blue cotton, but she had spent hours freshening it, removing stains and mending small tears. Maria Vasquez arrived early to help, bringing with her a small bouquet of wildflowers and desert blooms. "For the bride," she said with a warm smile. "Every woman should have flowers on her wedding day, even if it is, how do you say, practical arrangement." Lily accepted the bouquet gratefully, touched by the gesture. Maria then insisted on arranging Lily's hair, weaving small white flowers into her loose braid. "There," Maria said when she finished. "Very pretty. Senor Parker, he will be pleased." "It's not that kind of marriage," Lily reminded her, though she couldn't help glancing in the small mirror to admire Maria's handiwork. She, so you both say," Maria replied with a knowing smile that made Lily blush. "But marriage has its own magic, señorita. Sometimes the heart follows where practicality leads." Before Lily could respond, the sound of approaching horses announced the arrival of the justice of the peace and the other guests. Maria squeezed Lily's hand encouragingly before going to join her husband and brothers-in-law. Matthew knocked softly on her bedroom door. "Lily, everyone's here. Are you ready?" She opened the door, suddenly shy under his gaze. Matthew was dressed in his best clothes, a clean white shirt, dark vest, and pants that looked nearly new. He had trimmed his beard and slicked back his hair. The effect was striking. "You look lovely," he said after a moment, his voice lower than usual. "Thank you. You clean up nicely yourself, Mr. Parker." A smile tugged at his lips. "Probably the last time you should call me that, seeing as you're about to take the name." The ceremony itself was brief but dignified. The justice of the peace, a white-haired man named Judge Thompson, conducted the proceedings in the main room of the ranch house. The Vasquez family, along with 2 neighboring ranchers and their wives, served as witnesses. When the time came to exchange vows, Lily was surprised by the steadiness of her voice and the certainty she felt. Matthew's hand was warm around hers as they pledged to honor and protect each other traditional vows, despite the untraditional nature of their union. "By the authority vested in me by the state of Texas, I now pronounce you husband and wife," Judge Thompson concluded. "You may kiss your bride." A moment of awkwardness followed. They hadn't discussed this part. Matthew hesitated, then leaned forward and placed a gentle, chaste kiss on Lily's cheek. The gesture was brief but surprisingly tender, and Lily felt her face warm in response. A small celebration followed, with food Lily and Maria had prepared the day before, and music provided by Eduardo Vasquez on guitar. One of the neighboring ranchers had brought a bottle of good whiskey to toast the newlyweds. As evening approached, the guests began to depart, offering congratulations and well wishes. Judge Thompson was the last to leave, pulling Matthew aside for a brief, private conversation before mounting his horse for the journey back to Presidio. When they were finally alone, an unexpected shyness fell between them. They stood on the porch watching the dust settle from the departing visitors, the setting sun painting the landscape in golds and pinks. "Well, Mrs. Parker," Matthew said finally, testing the name. "How does it feel to be a married woman?" "Strange," Lily admitted with a small laugh, "but not in a bad way." She glanced at him curiously. "What did Judge Thompson say to you before he left, if you don't mind my asking?" Matthew's lips quirked in a half-smile. "He said he's performed many marriages of convenience over the years, especially out here where practical considerations often outweigh romantic ones. but he's found that many such marriages eventually become something more. He advised me not to be surprised if that happens. Oh. Lily wasn't sure how to respond to that. I told him our situation was different, Matthew added quickly. That this was truly just a practical arrangement. Of course, Lily agreed, ignoring the small twinge of something disappointment at his words. We should probably go inside. It's getting chilly. That night, Lily lay awake longer than usual, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch settling for the night. Nothing had changed, really. She was in the same bed in the same room. Matthew was across the hall, just as before. Yet everything felt different, charged with new meaning. She was a wife now, Matthew Parker's wife. On paper, at least. The thought both terrified and intrigued her in ways she wasn't ready to examine too closely. The days following the wedding settled into a routine similar to before, with one significant difference. Blackburn and his threats seemed to fade like morning mist under the sun. Word had spread quickly about the marriage, and the legal protection it afforded Lily made any claim Blackburn might assert essentially void. Matthew received confirmation of this when he rode into town a week after the wedding. Sheriff Wilson had approached him outside the general store, his manner grudgingly respectful. "Heard congratulations are in order, Parker," he'd said. "Blackburn's not too pleased about it, but he knows when he's beaten. Just keep your wife away from town for a while, let things cool down." Matthew had agreed, hiding his satisfaction. When he related the conversation to Lily that evening, she'd felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "So it worked," she said. "He's going to leave me alone. Seems that way." Matthew hung his hat on the peg by the door. "Though I'd still prefer if you didn't go to town alone just yet. Blackburn's been drinking heavily since he heard the news, according to Tamaz." "I have no desire to see Terlingua any time soon," Lily assured him. "Everything I need is right here." As autumn deepened toward winter, the ranch demanded more of Matthew's time. The cattle needed to be moved to more sheltered pastures, hay stores secured, and buildings prepared for the coming cold. Lily found herself taking on more household responsibilities, freeing Matthew for the outdoor work. She discovered she enjoyed the role more than she'd expected. There was satisfaction in keeping the house warm and comfortable, in preparing hearty meals that Matthew and occasionally the Vasquez brothers devoured with appreciation, in creating order from chaos with her own two hands. One evening in early November, as the first real cold snap settled over the land, Lily sat by the fire working on a quilt she'd started from fabric scraps Maria had given her. Matthew entered, stamping his boots free of mud, his face reddened from the wind. "Storm's coming," he announced, moving to warm his hands by the fire. "First big one of the season from the look of those clouds." Lily glanced up from her sewing. How bad? Could be just rain, could be sleet. Hard to tell this time of year. He glanced at her quilt. "That's coming along nicely. Thank you. Maria's been teaching me some techniques her mother used." Lily set the quilt aside. "Dinner's almost ready. Beef stew with those carrots we stored from the garden." Matthew nodded appreciatively, then hesitated. "Lily, there's something I've been meaning to ask you." The serious tone in his voice made her pause. "What is it?" "Christmas is coming up in a few weeks. I usually spend it alone, but I thought, would you like to invite the Vasquez family here for a proper celebration?" Maria mentioned they usually travel to her sister's in Presidio, but with the baby coming, they might prefer to stay closer to home. The unexpectedness of the question, so domestic, so normal, caught Lily off guard. "I think that would be lovely. I'd enjoy preparing a real Christmas dinner." Matthew smiled, the firelight catching the gold flecks in his hazel eyes. "Good. It's settled then." He paused, then added more quietly, It'll be nice not to spend the holiday alone this year." The simple admission touched Lily deeply. She thought of all the Christmases Matthew must have spent in this house by himself after his parents died, and her heart ached for the lonely young man he had been. "Yes, it will be," she agreed softly. Later that night, the predicted storm arrived with a vengeance. Rain lashed against the windows, driven by howling winds that made the house creak and groan. Lily woke to a particularly loud crack of thunder, sitting upright in bed, momentarily disoriented. A knock at her door followed. "Lily, are you awake?" Matthew's voice was tight with concern. "Yes, come in," she called, pulling the quilt up to her chin. The door opened, and Matthew stood there in his nightshirt and trousers, a lantern in his hand. "Sorry to disturb you, but that last thunderclap was actually a tree coming down. I need to check if it damaged the barn." "Now?" "In this storm?" Lily asked, alarmed. "If it damaged the roof and the horses are exposed to this weather, they could get sick or injured." He ran a hand through his sleep-tousled hair. "I'll be quick as I can." "Wait," Lily said, climbing out of bed and reaching for her robe. "I'm coming with you." "There's no need. I'm not letting you go out there alone," she insisted. "What if you get hurt? No one would know until morning." Matthew looked like he wanted to argue, but another crash of thunder made him glance anxiously toward the window. "All right, but stay close to me. The wind's dangerous." They dressed quickly, Lily putting her dress on over her nightgown for speed, and ventured out into the storm. The wind nearly knocked Lily off her feet as they stepped off the porch, and rain pelted her face like tiny needles. Matthew's arm went around her waist, steadying her as they made their way toward the barn. The fallen tree, a large cottonwood that had stood near the stream, had indeed struck the corner of the barn, though the damage seemed limited to a section of the roof. Inside, the horses nickered nervously but appeared unharmed. "We need to cover that hole before the rain ruins the hay," Matthew shouted over the storm. He pointed to a stack of oilcloth tucked against one wall. "Help me with that." Working together, they managed to secure the oilcloth over the damaged section of roof, temporarily stemming the flow of water. By the time they finished, both were soaked through and shivering. "Let's get back to the house," Matthew said, taking Lily's hand firmly in his. "Watch your step, the ground's turning to mud." They were halfway back when Lily's foot slipped in the muck, sending her sprawling forward. Matthew reacted instantly, catching her against his chest, but the momentum carried them both down. They landed in a tangled heap, Matthew somehow managing to twist his body so he took the brunt of the fall. "Are you hurt?" he asked immediately, his face inches from hers. "No," Lily gasped, breathless more from their sudden proximity than from the fall. Rain streamed down Matthew's face, plastering his dark hair to his forehead. His arms were still around her, warm and secure despite the cold rain. For one wild moment, Lily thought he might truly kiss her, not the chaste peck from their wedding. Something in his eyes, dark and intense in the storm-shrouded night, made her heart race. Instead, he carefully set her back on her feet. "We need to get inside before we catch our deaths," he said, his voice rough. Once back in the house, they stood dripping on the kitchen floor, both suddenly awkward in the lantern light. "You should get changed right away," Matthew said, not quite meeting her eyes. "I'll rebuild the fire." "You're just as wet as I am," Lily pointed out. "You should change too." "I will, as soon as the fire's going again." Lily nodded and retreated to her room, peeling off her sodden clothes with fingers numbed by cold. She dried herself quickly and put on her warmest nightgown, adding her robe for extra warmth. When she re-entered the main room, Matthew had indeed rekindled the fire and was feeding it smaller pieces of wood. He'd changed as well, into dry clothes that clung slightly to his still damp skin. "Come get warm," he said, glancing up as she approached. "You're still shivering." Lily hadn't realized it until he mentioned it, but her body was indeed trembling. She moved closer to the fire, extending her hands toward the warmth. "That was quite an adventure," she said, attempting to lighten the mood. Matthew smiled faintly. "Not the kind I'd care to repeat. But the barn should hold until morning when I can properly repair it." They stood side by side, the fire's warmth slowly seeping into their chilled bodies. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the house, a different kind of tension was building, one Lily wasn't sure how to address. "Would you like some tea?" she asked finally, needing something to do. "To warm up properly. That would be nice," Matthew agreed. As Lily busied herself heating water and preparing the tea, she found herself acutely aware of Matthew's presence in a way she hadn't been before. Something had shifted between them out there in the rain, something neither of them seemed ready to acknowledge. They sipped their tea in companionable silence, listening to the storm gradually lessen in intensity. When Lily's eyes began to grow heavy, Matthew gently took the empty cup from her hands. "You should get some sleep," he said. "It's still a few hours until dawn." Lily nodded, rising from her chair. At the doorway to her room, she paused. "Thank you, Matthew, for everything." He looked up, his expression softening. "No need for thanks between us. That's what marriage is for, isn't it? Even one like ours. Even one like ours." The words followed Lily into sleep, echoing with a note of something that sounded almost like regret. The following weeks brought a noticeable change to their relationship. Nothing overt, they maintained their separate rooms and their respectful distance, but there was a new awareness between them, as if that night in the rain had stripped away some invisible barrier. Matthew began including Lily more in discussions about the ranch's operations. He taught her to ride properly when she expressed interest, patiently working with her until she felt comfortable on horseback. They took short rides together when weather permitted, Matthew pointing out boundary markers and explaining his plans for expanding certain pastures come spring. For her part, Lily found small ways to show her growing affection, keeping his favorite biscuits on hand, making sure his shirts were mended before he even noticed they needed repair, learning which blend of coffee he preferred in the mornings. As Christmas approached, the ranch house underwent a transformation. Lily, with help from Maria Vasquez, decorated with pine boughs gathered from a nearby stand of trees, dried berries strung into garlands, and candles placed in strategic locations to cast a warm glow throughout the house. Matthew returned from a trip to Presidio with unexpected gifts: fabric for a new dress for Lily, candy for the Vasquez children, and a small pine tree that he set up in the corner of the main room. "My mother always insisted on a proper Christmas tree," he explained somewhat self-consciously as he secured it in a bucket of sand. "Thought you might like to continue the tradition." Lily was touched beyond words. "It's perfect," she said, running her fingers over the fragrant needles. "We'll decorate it tomorrow." Christmas Day itself brought clear skies and mild temperatures, a blessing in the unpredictable Texas winter. The Vasquez family arrived mid-morning, Maria heavy with child but glowing with health, Tomás and Eduardo carrying baskets of food to contribute to the feast, and their two young children wide-eyed at the decorated tree. The day passed in a haze of good food, laughter, and the simple joy of shared companionship. Lily found herself watching Matthew with the children, patient and gentle, as he showed them how to play a simple game with marbles he'd brought from town, and something tugged at her heart. This man, who had opened his home and eventually his name to her without asking anything in return, who worked from dawn to dusk to build something lasting in this harsh land, who treated everyone from his workers to his animals with quiet respect, This man was becoming far more to her than a convenient protector. That evening, after their guests had departed and the house was quiet once more, they sat before the fire exchanging their own small gifts. Lily had made Matthew a new scarf, knitted in secret during the evenings after he'd gone to bed. Matthew presented Lily with a small wooden box, beautifully carved with a pattern of wildflowers. "It's beautiful," Lily said, tracing the delicate workmanship. "Did you make this?" Matthew nodded, a hint of color rising in his face. "During those long evenings I claimed I was mending tack in the barn. It's for your sewing things or jewelry if you have any." "I love it," Lily said sincerely. "Thank you." "There's something else," Matthew said, reaching into his pocket. He withdrew a small object wrapped in tissue paper. "This was my mother's, I thought." "Well, you should have it, being my wife and all." Lily carefully unwrapped the tissue to find a simple gold band set with a small pearl. "Matthew, I can't accept this. It's a family heirloom. You are family now," he said quietly, "even if our arrangement is unconventional. My mother would have wanted you to have it." Their eyes met over the ring, and Lily saw in Matthew's gaze something that made her breath catch a warmth that went beyond friendship or the dutiful care of a man for his wife in name only. "Thank you," she whispered, slipping the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly as if made for her. "I'll treasure it always." As winter deepened into January 1879, bringing occasional ice storms and frigid nights, the boundaries between their practical arrangement and a true marriage began to blur. They still maintained separate bedrooms, but they spent their evenings together by the fire, Lily sewing or reading, Matthew carving small items or going over his accounts in a domestic harmony that felt increasingly natural. It was during one such evening, with wind howling around the eaves and a fire crackling merrily in the hearth, that the subject of their unusual marriage arose again. "Tamaz mentioned something interesting today," Matthew said, setting aside the figure he was whittling. "He said half the county thinks our marriage was because you were expecting a child." Lily looked up from her mending, startled. "What? That's ridiculous. We barely knew each other when we married." "That's what I told him," Matthew agreed. "But apparently the timing, you suddenly living here, then a quick wedding, made some people jump to conclusions." "Does it bother you?" Lily asked, watching his expression. "What people think, I mean." Matthew considered this. "Not for myself. People have thought worse of me over the years. But I don't like them questioning your honor." "My honor has survived worse than gossip," Lily said with a small smile. Then more seriously, "Matthew, are you content with our arrangement as it is?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with unspoken meanings. Matthew's gaze met hers, steady and searching. "Are you?" he countered softly. Lily set her sewing aside, her heart pounding. "I asked first." A smile touched the corner of Matthew's mouth. "Fair enough." He took a deep breath. "The truth is, Lily, I'm grateful for your presence here. The ranch feels more like a home with you in it, but I'd be lying if I said I hadn't. Wondered what it might be like if our marriage were more than just on paper." The admission, spoken quietly in the firelit room, sent a thrill through Lily. "I've wondered the same thing," she confessed. Matthew stood slowly, crossing to kneel beside her chair. "Lily, I need you to know something. When I offered you shelter that night, I truly had no expectations, and when I suggested marriage, it was genuinely for your protection." He took her hand gently in his. "But somewhere along the way, my feelings changed. I find myself caring for you in ways that have nothing to do with obligation or duty." Lily's free hand moved to touch his cheek, feeling the slight roughness of his beard against her palm. "My feelings have changed too, Matthew. I think perhaps they were changing even before I recognized it." For a moment they remained still, the only sounds the crackling fire and the wind outside. Then Matthew leaned forward, his eyes questioning. Lily answered by closing the distance between them, their lips meeting in a kiss that started gently but quickly deepened as months of unacknowledged longing found expression. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Matthew rested his forehead against hers. "I want you as my true wife, Lily Parker, in every way, but only if that's what you want too." "It is," Lily whispered. "It has been for longer than I've been willing to admit to myself." That night, Lily moved from her room to Matthew's not just for a night of passion, though that too was part of it, but as a permanent change. Their practical arrangement had transformed into something neither had expected when they'd entered into it, a genuine marriage, founded on respect and friendship, now blossoming into love. Spring came early to West Texas in 1879, bringing wildflowers that carpeted the hills in brilliant colors and new growth that turned the pastures a vibrant green. The ranch flourished under their joint care. Matthew's practical knowledge of the land, combined with Lily's meticulous attention to household management, created an operation more efficient and profitable than it had been before. In May, Maria Vasquez gave birth to a healthy baby girl, whom they named Lucia. Lily assisted with the delivery, discovering a natural aptitude for midwifery that led several other women from neighboring ranches to seek her help when their time came. Summer brought its own challenges: scorching heat that threatened the water supply, a brief but intense outbreak of fever among the cattle that required round-the-clock monitoring, and increased tensions with a new mining operation that was encroaching on grazing lands to the north. Through it all, Matthew and Lily faced each obstacle together, their bond strengthening with every challenge overcome. Their partnership, once a convenient solution to Lily's predicament, had become the foundation of a life neither could now imagine without the other. In August, as they celebrated their 10-month anniversary with a private picnic by the stream that ran through their property, Lily shared news that would change their lives once more. "Matthew," she said, taking his hand as they sat on a blanket under the shade of a cottonwood, "I have something to tell you." The seriousness in her tone made him look up sharply from the slice of apple pie he'd been enjoying. "Is something wrong?" "No," Lily assured him with a smile. "Something is very right. I'm going to have a baby, our baby." Matthew stared at her for a moment, processing the news. Then a grin spread across his face, wider than any Lily had ever seen from him. In one fluid motion, he set aside his plate and pulled her into his arms. "A baby," he repeated, wonder in his voice. "Are you certain Maria confirmed it last week? I wanted to be sure before I told you." Lily searched his face. "You're happy about this?" "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," Matthew said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I never thought I'd have a family of my own. After my parents died, I figured I'd live out my days alone on this ranch. And now," Lily prompted. "Now I have everything I never knew I wanted," he said simply. "A wife I adore, a child on the way, and a home filled with love instead of just shelter." That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over their land, Matthew wrapped an arm around Lily's shoulders, drawing her close against his side. "You know what I was thinking about today?" he asked. "What?" "That night I found you by the roadside. How different our lives would be if I'd ridden past without stopping or if you'd stayed hidden." Lily shuddered at the thought. "I can't imagine what would have become of me." "Nor I of me," Matthew admitted. "I didn't realize how lonely I was until you came along and filled this house with your presence." "It's funny," Lily mused. "When you offered me shelter that night, asking nothing in return, I was suspicious. I couldn't understand why a man would help a woman without expecting compensation." Matthew's arm tightened around her. And now I understand that true kindness exists, rare though it may be, and that sometimes what begins as simple human decency can grow into the deepest love. She placed her hand over his where it rested on her still flat stomach. I fled a saloon with nowhere to go, and you offered your ranch and asked nothing back. But in the end, Matthew Parker, you gave me everything, and I hope I've given the same to you. More, he said softly, pressing his lips to her temple. Far more than I ever dreamed possible. The first snow of winter dusted the Parker Ranch in early December 1879, transforming the landscape into a glistening wonderland. Inside the snug ranch house, now adorned with handmade decorations and the scent of pine, Lily sat in a rocking chair by the fire, cradling their 2-week-old son. James Thomas Parker had his father's dark hair and his mother's determined chin. He had arrived after a long but ultimately uncomplicated birth, with Maria Vasquez attending alongside. The Dr. Matthew had insisted on bringing from Presidio. Matthew entered from the cold, stamping snow from his boots before removing them at Lily's insistence. "How are my favorite people this afternoon?" he asked, crossing to kiss Lily's forehead and peer down at their sleeping son. "Perfect," Lily replied, smiling up at her husband. "Just perfect." As Matthew built up the fire against the growing cold outside, Lily reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From desperate flight to uncertain sanctuary, from marriage of convenience to deepest love, it had been a path neither of them could have foreseen that night on the dark road outside Terlingua. Beyond the windows, the Texas sky stretched vast and limitless, the future as wide open as the land itself. But inside, within the walls of the home they had built together, Lily Parker held her world in her arms, a world that had begun with one man's simple act of kindness, asking nothing in return.